Hello, welcome to the next episode of Photonpreneurs series. So this is the seventh episode, and today we'll talk about the state of deep tech and photonics for 2023. And we want to discuss the insights from the business and technology side. So my name is Maria, and I'll be your host today. I'm project manager at Funding Box, European Deep Tech Accelerator, and a partner in Photon Hub Europe. Photon Hub Europe is a project funded by European Commission, which seeks to boost the competitiveness and uptake of photonics technologies across Europe. So if you are a company innovating in photonics, or you are interested in any of the topics which I'm going to mention in a minute, you should definitely check it out. So the topics that Photon Hub Europe focuses on are technical support, training and access to advanced research centers focused on technologies, and also business and investment readiness coaching support. So if you are interested in receiving technical support or access to training and research centers, we strongly recommend you to go to the Photon Hub Europe project official website. You can see the website address in the slide here. We'll also share all the links in the video description, so you'll find them there without any problems. And once you go to the project website, you'll be able to fill out a short form and request the kind of support you are interested in, and next you'll be contacted for further support. Also, we have this Photon Hub community available. Maybe you've already joined, maybe you've seen it, but we strongly encourage you to join the community. This is where we publish the latest news and events connected with innovation support. So we strongly encourage you to join. Right. So yeah, this is the link for joining the community. But more importantly, we also have an open call. This is a continuous open call for investment readiness coaching and investor matchmaking support. So the cutoff, the call is continuous. You can apply anytime. We have cutoff dates every 2 months, and every 2 months we select up to 15 startups who would like to receive some kind of coaching training on the investment readiness topics. The coaching is provided by active investors, so this is the greatest value of the program. So we strongly encourage you to go to the microsite, check all the information, and apply to the program. The program targets photonics, but also what we call photonics-enabled startups, where some photonics technology is involved. And companies who are looking to raise funding. So it's like this one kind opportunity to get training, which will help you to pitch to investors, to review your financials, to understand the due diligence process. So if you are interested, as I mentioned, you'll find the link in the description to this video. And now, as the Photonpreneurs name suggests, this webinar series is designed to share fundraising tips and best practices around everything to do with the technology of light, so photonics. But today we would like to discuss what 2023 holds for deep tech and photonics industry and what trends are emerging. And for that, I'm very happy to welcome today our speakers. So we have a pleasure to record this webinar today with Bernard Buisson, who's a strategy and innovation management expert, and also Alejandro Dominguez, who is a photonics engineer, former researcher, and now a technology transfer specialist. We hope that this will allow us to discuss the two sides of what the future holds, so the business and technology side. So I let the speakers to introduce themselves now, maybe in more detail, and more importantly, tell us more about their experience with like innovation management strategy and also photonics technology. So Bernard, let's maybe start with you, right?
Thank you so much, Maria. So my name is Bernard Buisson. I work at École Polytechnique in Palaiseau, next to Paris. And I mostly design training programs for managers and executives on topics such as innovation management and sustainability. I also teach at École Polytechnique. I teach entrepreneurship for the school students. I have to make it short. I've had a corporate career for 25 years before joining executive education. So including 10 years working for Orange Labs, so the R&D branch of Orange. In the first decade of the 2000s, I started teaching in business schools and engineering schools, and in France and abroad. And I also started a PhD at Solvay Brussels Schools of Innovation of Economics and Management, focusing on innovation management. And so in the course of my career, I also coached technological startups for 8 years at HEC Challenge Plus, which is a dedicated program for experienced scientists who want to create their startups. So that's that's about me.
Thank you very much. So we are very happy to have you as a speaker today. Thank you, Bernard. Thank you. Alejandro, can you say a few more words about yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Maria. Thank you for the invitation and for having me. Yeah, so on my side, I'm a telecom engineer and a PhD in photonics. I've worked in consultant firm, also in academia, and in the startup scale-up ecosystem related with photonics. I had the role of R&D engineer, senior R&D engineer, and then I switched into business and technology development manager. So a little bit of a business vision towards the technical staff. And now I'm a consultant for technology and photonic projects, and mainly I'm a technology transfer specialist at Funding Box, where we are helping EU players with their product development and their go-to-market strategy. So this is what I do, and I'm really happy to be here today.
Thank you, Alejandro. We are very happy to be able to host you today as well. Thanks. All right then. So I think we can move on to the discussion. So we'll start with this business side. So Bernard, first a few questions to you. So what do you think will be the most important areas of innovation and growth in the deep tech industry over the next year? And how can businesses position themselves to take advantage of these trends?
Thank you, Maria. So what I first should say about the competitive landscape is that, okay, in 2023, the world is more divided, but we have to remind that it's still flat. So competition can come from anywhere. You can have a new competitor emerging in Vietnam or in South America. You don't know. So these things still happen. When it comes to the innovation, the trends regarding innovation, or the options which are available for deep tech companies to differentiate themselves. So main options for differentiation are basic stuff such as quality. You can focus on quality, you can focus on design, you can focus on service, you can focus on image or brand, and you can focus on innovation. The tricky part when you focus on innovation is that in most cases, it doesn't come only with technological innovation. Technological innovation is very often just a part of the innovation, and you have to combine it with other types of innovation, such as business model innovation or process innovation or product design or ergonomy innovation. So technological innovation is not the only component to take into account when you want to differentiate your company, and that's one of the tricky parts which entrepreneurs have a hard time fixing in their the development of their business.
Thank you, Bernard, for your answer. Yes, so Alejandro, what does it look from your perspective as a technology transfer specialist?
Yeah, so I fully agree with Bernard. Then the major challenge when you are innovating is to look at things from the other perspective, from the customer or the user point of view. So we tend to, let's say, as a technologist, you tend to focus on how good is your innovation, technological innovation, or your idea, but then you focus less, or you ask yourself less, is it valuable, is it useful for the end user and the customer? And this is what really matters at the end. So I think this stopping and thinking about that is a key element. And in terms of trends for this year, I think okay, we are all aware of the big hype with AI, and we are probably fed up with it in a way. But I would like to look at it from the positive side. So I see this big hype as having a real positive impact on the development of technology, because everyone is aware now of how AI can help us, because there was such an awareness that even kids or teenagers are using these tools, either conversational tools or image generation tools, and this could only create a virtuous cycle. So the more awareness there is, the more funding will be put on this development, and the faster this will advance. So this is a positive milestone that we are witnessing, and I think this is a historic moment.
All right, thank you very much, Alejandro, for your inputs. And Bernard, the next question to you, also, I think a very important one in the interesting times we live in. So how important do you think it is for businesses to prioritize sustainability and social responsibility in their deep tech initiatives, and how companies can balance these goals with the profitability and growth?
Yes, Maria. So this topic is very much on top of the agenda for all companies today. no matter which industry, which country, which size, all companies are concerned today when it comes to sustainability. And we are probably at a crossroad these days, because until recently, companies behave as if sustainability was something you had to balance with profitability. Basically, you had to choose one or the other, but you couldn't get both. The new reality is probably that you have to go for both, and that's going to become a necessity. So just one example to make it maybe more real. If you want to recruit today, especially if you want to recruit highly qualified or specialized engineers, these people are very sensitive to sustainability issues. And we happen to talk to companies in various sectors, so sometimes to companies in the oil and gas industry. And let's say in private conversations, they tell us that recruiting for them has become hell. So if you are in a company which doesn't take sustainability seriously, most probably recruitment is going to become very complex. There was, on this particular topic, there was a recent BCG report which which came up with a statistic. It said, if you are perceived as a company, you are perceived as a climate leader, you are 5 times more likely to attract candidates than if you are perceived as a climate laggard. So you cannot ignore these things today anymore. And the other reason why you cannot ignore them is that sustainable products and services will keep on growing, and will experience a strong traction in the coming years. So you should definitely look for these sustainable businesses in the coming years, and become sustainable as a very careful when it comes to sustainability as a company.
Okay, thank you very much, Bernard. Alejandro, and how do you understand sustainability and social responsibility from this technical, let's say, points of view?
I think it's a challenge always, as Bernard said, mostly when you are focused on your development, and it's hard to think outside of it. But I'm happy to see that more and more companies are aware of the impact this is having on, also on their brands. Like today, it's having bad PR, it's killing businesses. So companies are extremely aware of it, and they are very careful about their image in terms of sustainability. One example actually from the oil and gas sector, a few years back, there was this the leader in the Norwegian company, oil and gas company called Statoil, that decided to change their name to Equinor, because they had oil in their name, and they wanted to probably shift towards a different business. Of course, they will keep doing business with oil and gas for a while, but they are changing their image, their company image, and this is towards having a more appealing brand and probably making things easier for recruiting, as Bernard said. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. So I understand that nowadays you cannot actually separate sustainability from the profitability and growth strategy. They need to go hand in hand.
Yep.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. So and Bernard, how do you see the role of governments and regulatory bodies in shaping the deep tech industry, and what impacts do you think policies related to privacy, data security, and intellectual property will have on businesses operating in this deep tech industry space?
Yeah, so obviously government regulations under any form are often perceived as constraints for companies. So it's probably more true on the other side of the Atlantic. So US companies are very reluctant to most forms of regulations. But in Europe, the thing we should keep in mind is that governments and the European Union are a driving force when it comes to the development of deep tech and deep tech startups. So just one example related to France. In France only, there is a plan which is called France 2030, and its budget is 54 billion euros to be spent within 5 years, and most of it will go to deep tech companies. So when you think about the role of government, in Europe at least, I think we should keep in mind that government and public funds are a driving force when it comes to the development of technological companies. Without them, we probably would not have this conversation. There are an infinity of projects and schemes which have been designed and funded by government money or European Union money to help startups grow. So we should keep that in mind.
Of course. Thank you. And Alejandro, from the perspective of a former researcher and now a person who helps to take the idea from the research to the market, would you say that all those policies can be a constraint? Is it often perceived this way by the startups that you work with?
I think generally it is perceived in that way, because you need to think that technology is always more advanced than the regulations. The policies are coming after the development is normally done. But it is also true that with regards to those regulations and those constraints, there appears a lot of business opportunities. And connected to the previous questions about sustainability, this is creating a lot of business opportunities. I remember a colleague, a former researcher, now an entrepreneur from the United Kingdom. He started his company to take CO2 from industries and through some biological process that I don't know, he would transform this into animal food, so food for animals. So this only can happen if there is someone pushing to reduce the CO2 emission. So there is a constraint at first that would probably be seen as a showstopper for someone, but then there is an opportunity and a window opening somewhere else. So generally, we tend to see this as a constraint, but there are many opportunities within reach as well.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very optimistic view, I guess, of all the regulations and policies. Yes, each constraint can become an opportunity. All right, then, Bernard, and what's the next question to you? What do you see as the biggest challenge facing businesses operating in the deep tech industry, like nowadays for 2023, and how can companies address these challenges to ensure their success?
So I would say the intuitive answer would be to focus on external challenges. So what does the war in Ukraine implies, or what does the division of the world between two blocks, what could it imply for companies, and so on. So I prefer to focus on the internal challenges. Well, it comes from my experience, and from my experience, the biggest challenges for technological startups come from within. And I will mention a few ones. First one, probably one of the biggest, founders, especially if they used to be researchers, fall in love with their technology. So this is very much linked with the myth, this techno push myth. It says, if you come up with the best, the most sophisticated technology, it will sell like hotcakes. It doesn't work. It never happens. And so this comes with another probably killer challenge, which is it puts founders in a tunnel because they refine their technology behind closed doors, and they don't talk to anyone because they are the experts, which is true. But the reality of the development of a startup, especially in the early stage, is, and that's one of the points Alejandro mentioned earlier, you have to go out and talk to a lot of people, whether they are clients or experts in related domains, whatever. But you need to go out and talk with real people, because if you stay behind closed doors refining your technology for 4 years, most probably you will be dead when you go out. So you have to be very careful. This is a trap, and I've seen this again and again and again. You should not get stuck into this. So another challenge which happens again and again is founders in technological startups. They chase funded research projects, and they end up doing most of activity and spending most of their time on funded research projects. But funded research projects are not real business. They won't help you grow your business, fortunately. And so the other thing which comes with this is that when they get client projects, they take whatever comes around, and this can be very bad for the development. So it turns out that founders have to not only to look for client projects, so real projects, but they also have to look carefully, to monitor carefully the profitability of their project. So one example, last year I coached one company in tech industry, and they didn't even know what the profitability of their various projects were, because they never asked themselves this question. They never thought it was important. It turns out it is important. If you want to increase the probability of your company becoming a high growth, high profit star in 5 years or more, you have to go for profitability before taking every client project on earth. Because, and this comes with two major perks. So, well, there are two major studies which have shown that if, as a startup, you go for profit, you prioritize profitability of projects before growth, most probably you increase the probability of ending up as high growth, high profit company. So that's one perk. The other perk is it will enable you to retain a better control of your company. If you increase the profitability, it means that you won't need to raise external money as fast as if you're just looking for growth. So you, as the CEO of deep tech startup, you should keep these points in mind. And it's very difficult. My experience is that it's very difficult for people with a research background to keep their eyes on these balls. It's incredibly complicated for them.
I understand. Alejandro, is that also your experience?
Yeah, well, I would actually like to get Bernard's opinion on not my experience, because I was never a founder, but I've been, as I said, in the startup scale-up ecosystem. And one of the challenges that I see within deep tech startups, with deep tech, I mean real breakthrough innovations, and particularly in photonics. These are developments that are very much linked to high capital needs. So I probably see why there's a tendency to focus on publicly funded projects, because this is probably the easiest way to not give away equity on your company and still have some money to run some project. But what would you advise to these founders that are in a sector or in an industry, to be more precise, that is really demanding in terms of capital? So it's really hard to do the initial minimum viable product. So it's a huge barrier of entry. So there is a lot of needs of capital, and at the same time, you burn cash super quick, because you need engineers, you need a big group, and you need to purchase materials. So it's a completely different company development to an e-commerce or an app, which can be more agile. So what's your take on this?
No, so obviously there are industries where you will never be profitable from day one. So if you need 5 million euros to come up with the first proof of concept, this puts a lot of pressure on raising external capital. Yes, no, I agree with you. But for most technologies, you can find ways to twist the techno, or come up with a how should I say, a lower hand version of the product. So not so technology. You can do something which is not at the edge of research, because, well, if you are in deep tech industry, most probably you know how to do less advanced version of the same technology. And so these could be ways to grow a line of products which is not so technologically advanced, but which you can sell. So it makes your life a bit difficult, because you have to work on two lines of products. So one which is very research intensive, and the other one which is not so research intensive. It doesn't make your life easy, but if you are able in one way or another to start growing a line of business which is profitable early, you should go for it. But most of the time, founders are not very interested, because they are in love with the very best of research, and it's very difficult for them to go back to less advanced version of the same technology.
Yeah, I think this is also linked. Sorry, Maria, for stepping in again. I think I agree, because this is also linked to the pride of a researcher, when normally you are doing research to advance the state of the art. So you want to be at the forefront. So it's kind of a shame or perceived as a failure to do something that is less advanced, more, let's say, common, but still profitable. So I think sometimes the balance is more on the let's do more advanced and less profitable than less advanced and more profitable.
And that's why it's very difficult for pure researchers to switch into the shoes of CEO because these rely on very different personal characteristics. As a researcher, you are obsessed with technology. As a CEO, you should be obsessed with profitability and growth. And it's a very different game. So the guys who can play both games, there are not so many. And that's why a number of startups end up with having this research founder profile and this business developer profile, which raises other problems.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for this very interesting exchange. Yes, and I guess it's very hard to imagine true innovation without, deep research. I don't think it's there's a possibility like that. So yeah, there's always the need to combine the two, the research and the business side, right? So Bernard, I guess one of the last questions to you, how do you see the relationship between established companies, corporates, and startups evolving in their deep tech journey, and what strategies would you recommend for those companies?
Well, probably because let's say I have a few decades of experience. I've lived different very different times. To make it simple, before 2004, you had two very separate planets. So basically, large companies and on one side and small startups on the other side. And large companies relied on the religion of not invented here. So anything which had not been invented in-house was not worth any consideration. It changed in 2004, mostly because of the book of Henry Chesbrough, which is called Open Innovation. And on that moment, large companies fell in love with startups. They said, oh, this is a smart way to innovate. We have to close partnerships or close deals or even buy startups. And that's how we can innovate in a much more efficient way. So that was the theory. The reality has been slightly more complex. The reality is that the love story between large groups and startups often ends with a kiss of death, meaning that the closer the large company gets from the startup, the higher the probability the startup is going to die for a number of reasons. But typically, a large company buys a small startup very technologically advanced, and the startup just cannot, once it's been bought, all the engineers just leave because they can't stand it. And so I would say that for the relationship to be smooth, you have to be very careful to look at the compatibility of people and the compatibility of culture. Because if it's not there, if the people have no respect, the people on one side have no respect for the people on the other side, or the culture on one side just cannot be merged in any way with the culture on the other side, nothing will happen. Just tears. So it's a very complex relationship, and whether you are a large group or a startup, you should be very careful before you get closer to the other side, because it doesn't always end well. That's my experience.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very interesting point of view, like the culture of the companies, right? Okay, now we would like to move on more to this technology and photonics side. So Alejandro, a few questions to you. The first one being, what emerging technologies and applications do you see as having the most potential for growth and innovation in the photonics industry in the coming years? And how do you see these technologies shaping the future of industry? You talked about AI. Let's bring it back to photonics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have to say that well, the two things. First, there's a big gap. So when you hear AI, you're relatively familiar with it, and I'm happy that everyone is relatively familiar with it. It's not the case with photonics. Photonics sounds too much as a science fiction term. So there's and it shouldn't be, because photonics is a widely mature industry, and it's spread all over. So displays, phones, cars, it's basically everywhere. Our communications, the network runs on optical fibers. So, it's been there for decades, but still, it's maybe too much of a technical word. Maybe we at the photonic industry are not good sellers, but there is this gap between the developments and what people know that can happen. I'm happy that this is happening with AI. I hope this will happen with photonics, but I would like to. So photonics is very transversal as well. So photonics is like electronics, is, as I said, is everywhere. So it doesn't need to be either this or that, either AI or photonics, either quantum or photonics. It's actually happening thanks to photonics, and photonics is happening or evolving thanks to AI, for example, right? But to highlight, because this is a very tough question, to highlight one single technology to look at in the upcoming years, I would look at the photonic integrated circuits. So this is like, we're talking about making chips as we know them, let's say quote unquote chips, which work with light or photons instead of electrons. So this is currently happening, it's ongoing, but it's going to be a key player in the upcoming developments that are to come now. And thankfully, we are well positioned also in Europe towards this in this sector. We have big players all over Europe with several poles in different locations, but we are very, very well positioned. And for which applications, again, this is going to be telecom. This is the major driver. Well, Bernard can mention, of course. So miniaturizing transceivers, etc. This is one of the goals always that you would have. Quantum for communications. We have space communications as well, which will be benefiting from integrated circuits. So I think this is going to be the single most important driver of growth in the upcoming years, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alejandro. And Bernard, how do you see the business potential of this kind of tech solutions?
Well, obviously the developments in deep tech are going to keep on moving very fast in the coming months and years. So I've discovered recently the development in the computer industry linked to FPGA. So these things can really change the world and bring incredible solutions to topics such as cybersecurity, for instance. So, and the developments Alejandro mentioned in with the mixing electronics and photonics can be decisive as well. So a lot of things are going to happen. 2023 is already an incredible year, and I'm confident that we will see a lot of developments in the coming months and obviously years.
Okay, thank you very much. And Alejandro, as the demand for high performance and energy efficient optical systems continues to grow, what research areas do you believe will be most important for advancing the field of photonics, and what role do you see academic institutions and government agencies playing in this process?
Yeah, so I'll start from the end. Academia and research institutions, they have a major role in moving forward these topics, and thankfully, at least I can speak of Europe, but I also know that in the US it's happening the same way. This is supported by the government and supranational entities in quite a good way. So we are lucky in this sense. But in terms of high performance and energy efficiency, I was reading the other day that the data centers are accounted for almost 3% of the world energy consumption. So, and I think this figure comes from 2020, so it's already probably doubled. So when it comes to this, and thinking that the demand of bandwidth and the data consumption is increasing as well, then you need to be very careful of how you spend your energy on processing your data. And then this comes again to the photonic integrated circuits, for sure. There's going to be a key player in this field, but also to optical fiber links. And one of the key factors that will probably be benefiting from the developments on these two technological fields will be what's called edge computing. So the idea that, okay, I have old times, right? So I had a data center transferring a lot of data to a lot of people. So there is data traveling through tons of nodes in the network, etc. So there is a high load of data all over the network, right? So the idea is to move those unified, let's say, data centers closer to the user, so there is not an overload of the whole network, but the data is transferred in a shorter distance. But to do so, you need to improve the speed, let's say speed of your links. So you would need to improve your optical fiber connection. And there are now works in squeezing in more, let's say, data channels into the same optical fibers that we have, but also putting more physical channels into the same, into the ducts that are holding the optical fibers. And this will all help with the efficiency that we are talking about. And when it comes to the photonic integrated circuits, just to mention that the role of the government agencies, it's super important. And now we're seeing the European Commission is published the European Chips Act, and also the US has done the same. And I know that South Korea has done something similar. So, okay, this is also due, as Bernard said, to geopolitical situations as well. But everyone realized that, okay, this is some critical field, we need to invest in this, and we are putting a lot of money on this for the upcoming years. So yes, the government agencies are quite aware of the importance of this topic, and I'm happy that they are supporting the right fields.
Okay, thank you. And Bernard, how do you see maybe, let's say, cooperation between government agencies and the business in shaping certain policies or regulations which are beneficial for the technology and the business? Is that?
Yeah, no, this, to build on the answer of Alejandro, if you look at the CO2 emissions of data centers around the world, it's more than the entire aviation industry, which is crazy. But that's where we are. So the issue of energy efficiency will obviously be pushed very hard by governments, and this will obviously impact the entire electronic and photonic industry as well. So maybe the other thing we need to have in mind when it comes to the role of government or the influence, potential influence of government is obviously the expectations of governments are going to be very high when it comes to defense application in the coming months and years, because that's one way of what should I say, make sure that potential opponents do not want to risk a war because the technological gap is too important. So governments will be very active and are already very active regarding this matter and the relationship between defense in the Western world and number of technologies, including photonics, will be very important.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, and Alejandro, the last question I guess we have prepared for you is how do you see the relationship between photonics and other areas of deep tech? I guess you've partially already answered that in the coming years. So, and what are the opportunities for businesses that are able to effectively integrate photonics with other technologies? So you've talked about photonics integrated circuits and so photonics and electronics. Anything else there?
Yeah, sure. I actually, as I said before, photonics is transversal, is very horizontal, and it wouldn't make sense to isolate it from any other field of innovation. And it's so transversal that the European Commission highlighted as one of the 6 key enabling technologies. So it's already perceived as an enabling technology for many innovations. And I would recommend to keep a holistic approach when doing business, of course, and when doing innovation, because it doesn't make sense to be isolated. We as researchers, as we said, we tend to be focused on the advancement of the particular field, but there is much more value that you can generate when you look at in parallel. You know, when you look at the sites and you see what's happening in other different fields. And I would give a couple of examples of this interplay between different fields. I've talked about the importance of the optical fiber network for everything that we do. Like the conversation we're having now goes through optical fiber, thanks to that. And there is a network. You can check it online. There are very nice animations. You could see the map of subsea optical fiber cables that there are deployed all over the world that are connecting between continents, etc. This network was firstly deployed for communication purposes, all right? But by keeping this holistic approach, researchers that were using these fibers for other purposes realized that this network has a huge values, and this other purpose is sensing. So nowadays you can turn any optical fiber into an array of thousands of sensors, being thermometers, being vibration sensors. So if you think about it, you have a widely spread array of sensors worldwide in the subsea, under the sea, that could be used for early detection of earthquakes. That is also, it's actually being used. You can detect an earthquake like 9,000 kilometers away. It's super sensitive, and you can do that to study earthquakes, to try and predict early prediction of tsunamis, also for volcano eruptions. There is some earth that is moving before the volcano is erupting, so you can probably send an alarm for that. So this is an interplay between two fields that probably would look like very far apart. Seismology and optical fiber communications, no, doesn't have anything in common. And the other example I wanted to give is that a few years back, I was invited to a very nice conference in a super beautiful location called Forest and Photonics. This is organized by Photonics Finland, led by Juha Pulmonen. And, forests and photonics, also, what does it have to do with one another? But it turns out it has a lot to do with one another. So I witnessed a lot of developments in aerial imaging for detecting the quality of crops or the health of trees. If there is a disease spreading, now with the climate change, the rise of temperature, there are some trees that are getting some plagues more often. So you would do this with drone aerial imaging or with satellites, all through enabled by photonics, because you're using photonic sensors and photonics enabled imagery. Also head-up displays, so the workers using an excavator or a machinery to cut trees, they would have some advanced displays, so this would increase their efficiency, of course, but also their safety. So this is the interplay that really brings value. So my point is that I would keep a very holistic approach and try to span your mindset, open mindset, and because this is where the real innovations are happening.
Okay, thank you very much. These are fascinating examples, and I guess that they also refer to what Bernard was mentioning earlier, that as a researcher you have to go out, look around, and talk to many people. I guess, right? All right. So just to finish off, you both have mentioned this like necessity of looking around in parallel, and for a researcher, however funny that may sound, to look outside the box of their research. And this is actually the feedback we have recently received from a mentor in our investment readiness coaching, that there is this trend, that there is a real trend for a research person to employ a business person, and the business person does not understand the technology person does not understand the research. So is there any advice you could give to let's say similarly created startups, how they can bridge this gap? How should they operate to make it more coherent?
You want me to answer this one?
I would like both of you to answer this
okay.
one.
No,
I
I
don't
can,
want-
I can start, but basically, the issue you're touching is the issue of okay, how do you find the best possible business partner?
Mhm.
And it's a very difficult question. So, well, the thing I would say is when you look for a business partner, you should not look above all for competencies, which might sound strange, but you should look first for compatibility, the compatibility of the two personalities, because in the long run, this is going to be what's matter. Circumstances are going to change, technologies are going to evolve. If you are very good at a specific technology, wonderful. If you are very good at some specific aspect of the business, very good as well. But in a business association, the compatibility of people, it's like a marriage. You have to find ways to get along for months and hopefully years. So the compatibility of the personalities is, in the end, is going to matter more than everything else. That's also my experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Alejandro, what would be your piece of advice?
Well,
Yeah.
I actually lived this on myself, my flesh. So I stepped in from having a more pure technical position into a mix between technical / business position. And I don't know how good I did, of course, but the challenge I had was exactly that, to change my mindset, to learn a lot about the business aspect of every matter, which I found extremely interesting. That should be said, but it's difficult because you need to understand both sides. You need to understand, let's say, the client side, what the client don't know he or she needs, because they don't know what you can do, and then you need to understand your offer. You need to understand what you do and how to adapt it. So it's a very difficult task, and a very difficult position, but the key one that I think the company should put some effort in, for sure. And my piece of advice as well is to focus, no matter if you have a business person or not, to focus on the value that you are creating to your users. And as Bernard said, go out, reach out to other companies, to your potential customers. There are many tools that you could use. The ones that we are now discussing today from Photon Hub are very useful as well. So yeah, go out and always keep the customer at the center.
Okay, thank you very much, Alejandro. So I'm very grateful that you had this possibility and time to join us for this really very interesting discussion. So thank you very much once again for that. So to those who are watching this webinar, I'd like to remind you that if you are interested in the technical support or training, please go to the Photon Hub website. If you would like to receive support in investment readiness, we are sharing the link to the open call in the description of this video as well. And you are invited also to join the Photon Hub community, where we will be publishing this webinar and more materials in the future as well. So thank you, Bernard. Thank you, Alejandro. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Maria.
you very much.
Thank you.